Step into the Oracle Parlor, a podcast where those interested in witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, and all things paranormal come to sip and spill the magical tea. This parlor is a space to grow by maintaining our curiosity over fear when it comes to the spooky and the paranormal. I'm your host, Jenny, otherwise known as Fantasma Witch. I'm a previous visual storytelling artist from animation, now full-time psychic witch, who is getting her MA in psychology to become a licensed therapist. Every other episode, I will share my paranormal experiences, different witchy experiences on a variety of topics, while other episodes, I will be talking with witchy guests of all backgrounds, from writers to artists to well-known social media witches, so we can learn about their practices and how they grew into their personal power. So get cozy and grab your tea. It's time to get mystical. Hello, my magical, mystical friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Oracle Parlor podcast. I am so excited because we have a return guest in the parlor today. Hello, Rebekah. Why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who may not, which at this point I'd be surprised for anyone listening who may not know who you are.
Well, hello everybody. I am Rebekah the Ghost Guide, and I'm very excited to be back on here for my second time on your podcast because I've had such a lovely time in the past. And of course, you've been featured on my channels as well, and it's just been really great getting to know you better over time too.
Yes, same. I'm so excited that we got to connect previously and we've gotten to have these conversations. And now we're here today to talk about something very special, which is you have a book coming out later this month. This episode is going to be releasing right weeks before it actually makes its public debut. And your book is going to be called The Not So Scary Guide to Ghosts: How to Make the Paranormal Normal. I love the title. I am so excited to dive into this conversation. And of course, the first question I have to ask you was, what was the inspiration for you to write this book? What made you go, this is the book I feel like people need right now?
This book, which I have with me, which I will show off because I'm so happy about it.
I love it.
The inspiration first came from a small idea. I had seen different people being like, oh, write a pamphlet, make a free source for people, that kind of thing. And I figured, well, I will write a pamphlet from my perspective of how to understand the psychic senses, the psychic skills, as they call them, or the clair senses, and how to directly apply that specifically to ghosts, because there are a lot of different spirits out there. Of course, you got ghosts, past loved ones, deities, ancestors, guides, inhuman stuff, all kinds of things. And I love talking about ghosts. I've always been fascinated with ghosts. I used to be afraid of ghosts. And I've always had a passion for encouraging people to overcome their fear and become more curious with ghosts. And so I made this pamphlet and I put it out there just for free. I was like, hey, and it still exists. If anybody wants a free pamphlet, please go get it. And I was contacted by a senior editor at Adams Media who is under the umbrella of Simon and Schuster. And she said, hey, I've been following you since 2021, and I never saw like potential of what, my publishing agency could do for you until you made this pamphlet. She said, this pamphlet could be a book. Would you be interested in discussing more? And that was just
Wow.
dropped in my inbox one day. My email, because I'm not in my DMs. I tell that to everybody. I'm not in my DMs. Please go through the proper channels. I have a website, etc. But yeah, I'm in a meeting for something else. I'm about to go to a meeting for something else, and that just gets dropped in my inbox. And I was like, the tears start, and I'm like with my computer. I'm like, Simon, Simon Schuster, like, and things went pretty fast from there. I initially started this to just, I mean, my whole channel has been working to help myself overcome my fears. And then over time, I realized how much I was doing to help others overcome their fears. And so often with videos, it's taken out of context or it's only, a minute long to 3 minutes long. There's so much that's missed out of that. And I can't always tell people, hey, just dedicate the next, 5 hours to going through my playlist. Good luck. So having something that is all together and all just right here, and people can own it and mark it up and look through it and highlight and share these thoughts with others near them. It just seems like an answer to so many issues I've had on the internet. So I'm happy to have it.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I love that it started with a pamphlet. I had no idea that you were kind of doing your own, it sounds like self-printing of this idea in a very condensed format. So
Yeah.
it just seems like it really grew and blossomed once you got that email and you were able to like fill it in with more details. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, what I did not realize was in printing or making that pamphlet, which I did all on my own. I got the cutest little ghost like pictures off of Canva. I made the designs myself and it was basically an obsession for about a 48-hour period, as one does. And I didn't realize at the time what I had essentially put out was an outline for a book.
Mhm.
I didn't that did not compute whatsoever. And the coolest thing was with this book, I told them about how I created it and when I pitched it to the larger editing team or the larger senior editing team, I even included the pictures from the pamphlet and I included the theme and the colors and all the things like they're probably used to getting, black print on white background. And I was like, no, let me show you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Because I wanted a friendlier approach to the paranormal. Every
Mm.
paranormal book that I've ever seen, it's always black, green, or blue, the occasional purple. And it's you know what exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Like everyone can see in their minds.
Mhm.
It's always dark and there's always some like shadowy woman in either white or black up against a Victorian home or a castle.
Mhm.
And that's like every paranormal book. And when I was trying to understand the reality that I was living amongst ghosts, those books never called to me because I was like, whoa, I'm already afraid. That cover
Mm.
looks scary. I don't want to experience that. So my answer to that was creating something friendly, creating something approachable, creating something fun. I feel like this is the kind of book you could bring to a sleepover with your bestie and be like, ooh, let's talk about, our psychic senses a little bit. Let's see if we can see something rather than the let's conjure the dead and, hope it's not a demon. Like it's just this is a very different approach.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that because like as someone who used to work professionally as an artist, it does have that more like welcoming, friendlier vibe that you're talking about. Especially like I love that it has like little sheet ghosts on it because like I personally huge fan sheet ghosts. They have like this nostalgia like kind of vibe for me as a kid who used to put on the sheet and cut out the holes in the sheets that were like not the nice sheets, so I wouldn't get in trouble. But like very like also Casper, the friendly ghost kind of feel. So I do appreciate that about your book, and I love how you're calling out those like stereotypes that we often see. Because like yeah, when I was a kid and I was really interested in learning about the paranormal, like you're saying, most of those books have that like big scary house that's got like a tilted camera shot and it's like kind of like action blur, black and white. Very, very spooky. And I appreciate that your voice in this community, in this field, is about warming that up and making that more friendly and more approachable. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm like a goth girly here sitting in like my Victorian style top and everything and my like glasses changed. Like, I love the dark aesthetic. But I agree that like, so much of media and so much of what's been popularized is spooky scary. And it's like, well, it can be spooky cute or spooky inviting and fun. It can still be kind of spooky, but we're kind of removing the fear factor from it. And it really seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it really seems like your book aims to, invite people into that, okay, let's remove the fear factor from it and let's make it more how can we integrate it and not be so afraid of it? And I know you had already mentioned that, growing up, you were scared of, the paranormal and these experiences you were having. So it kind of seems like this is also something that maybe you would have needed when you were a kid.
Yeah. Also, reeling it back real quick, should you have photos of you as a she ghost? I think we all need to see them publicly, you know? You're
I
welcome to
I will
tag me
have
in the
to
comments and
see.
be like, you asked.
I do have a creepy child drawing I did from like kindergarten where it's like, what's your favorite thing to see? And I wrote ghosts and drew really terrifying like sheet ghosts. Like, yeah, I will share that.
I feel like we would have been friends because I would have been like, you can see ghosts, me pretending like I can't see ghosts, and then being like, well, what was it like for you? Oh yeah, that'd be so scary to see ghosts. Not like I've ever seen a ghost. Because I don't know. But well, that's you saw like that would be me. I'd be just like, tell me what it's
Yes.
like to see ghosts. Because I didn't know what was going on. The other thing too that you brought up, a friendlier approach to the paranormal specifically when we are in our fear, how are we supposed to trust our senses? Fear is something telling us that we need to survive. And survive is oftentimes, the fight or flight. And oftentimes, the fight, if we can't see it, we don't even know what we're fighting. So it's kind of like throwing punches at the air and then questioning, like, is there something like, am I being attacked? But when we're in fear, we don't have the option to question that. We don't have the option to always slow it down. Like that is certainly something that needs to be practiced to say, hey, do I need to be afraid here? So when coming at it from a curiosity standpoint,
Mhm.
it relieves that part of the brain, but it also allows the creative part to come into play. And it's through that creative part that we can actually really get into the psychic senses, as I know you know.
Mhm.
And answering the question that you asked, like this book, like I I wrote the book that I needed when I was having my spiritual reawakening.
Mhm.
I remember that time I was hungry. I was so hungry to understand. For the first time in my life, I was so hungry to understand what was going on because up until that point, I had been running from it. I had been shutting it down. I had successfully shut a lot of it down.
Mhm.
And I finally got to a place, both mentally as well as a place in like physical time. I mean, Wilmington, North Carolina, very haunted, talking about ghosts, very normal. Suddenly, it was normalized. I didn't feel like I was the odd man out. Everybody kind of had a ghost story to tell if they had been working downtown long enough. And it was always, oh, yeah, this happened to me. But there was never the secondary part of what do I do with it?
Mm.
My hunger for knowledge came from the what do I do about it? Okay, I'm experiencing something. Now what? And at the time, the resources that I found were very much catered to higher frequency beings. So the
Mm.
deities and the lowest frequency that these psychic mediums would talk about were past loved ones. And of course, they can kind of rise and fall depending on where they are with the ancestor spectrum and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. I had so many questions. I even ran into psychic mediums who were like, oh, yeah, I talk to past loved ones all the time. I talk to angels all the time. I'm terrified of ghosts. And I was like, well, that doesn't answer any of my questions. Or they would say, I don't believe in ghosts. And I'm like,
Yep.
well, you clearly don't see what I see. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I once again did not see myself represented in books.
Mm.
And I didn't see myself represented online
Yeah.
because it's like to be a psychic medium for paranormal stuff was very pigeonholed into it was always like a scared woman being thrown in by herself in the
Mm.
dark,
Mm.
or it was just, I just didn't identify with that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I mean, my whole channel has been setting out to understand these things and setting out to help people perhaps see themselves in understanding these things and see themselves having
Mm.
different experiences.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book for the younger version of me that was hungry and did not have the answers and had to make a lot of curious decisions. I nearly said wrong, but there's no wrong and right when there is learning. And
Hmm.
and my whole aim is to help people have an easier time of it. If I can share my experiences with people and they can have an easier time, wow, how much faster can they advance? And then we can have even better conversations on how to best understand different situations.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And I completely understand where you're coming from with that, like not quite fitting into this category of like that kind of like, we have the spooky paranormal over here, and then we have the category of that, like what you were talking about in mediumship books, where it's like, oh, we don't talk about ghosts, we talk to the past loved ones. And when I was trying to develop my mediumship abilities years ago, I was in a lot of different communities and I was trying to like engage and find my place and also um, lose that fear that I had built around, perceiving ghosts and scary things all my life. And I found the same thing happening where a lot of these people in the communities, some of them love and light people, which we're not going to get into in this episode, but there's this idea of like, oh, we only talk to like higher realm beings and our ancestors, period. And it's like there's so much more beyond that. And I remember even being in a reading one time with someone and I sensed a spirit in their home. Like I could see them standing behind them. And I was like, oh, you actually have a spirit in your house. And they freaked out. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And that's when I learned not all mediums are comfortable with these kind of more, the only word I can really think to use is more transient style spirits where they're not labeled as ancestor or higher realm, but they're just like somebody passing through and they're just kind of hanging out in your home and you don't really know them. You don't have, connection with them. So I appreciate that, your book is able to find that middle ground where it's like, okay, we're not going hardcore here. We're not going hardcore here. We're finding that space for people. And it really does sound like, to me, from what you're talking about, this book is really great for people who are both interested in starting mediumship abilities and people who maybe have already kind of been there, but are like kind of what we're talking about, like finding that space, that in between. Would you
Yeah.
say, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Because I wanted to write a book that would be as all-encompassing as possible, a
Yeah.
great starting point and a way where people may read it and they're like, ghosts are cool. I'm not in such a haunted place. So maybe
Hmm.
next time I go to a haunted place, I can utilize this. But there's also the utilization of fine-tuning other things that are out there. I have a whole chapter about what are types of spirits, how do you define energetically the difference between a god and a ghost, especially a god, an upper world god from an underworld god, or a in between world god, or fae, or something like that. I had to keep it brief just because the editor was very much like, hey, this is great, we need to get back to the ghost, and I was like, I understand. So but still, if anything, I want this book to give people some more direction on what they want to focus on and why they want to
Hmm.
focus on that. A lot of mediums that I've run into, they don't focus on the frequency and density differences. They think everything is high frequency or high vibration or something like that, or when they're connecting to it. And there can be something that is a higher frequency, but a lower density, and that just might be like an underworld god. I have a
Hmm.
lot of conversation on here where I talk about like, hey, heavy doesn't mean bad. You need to understand different concepts of heavy. Just because it makes us
Yes.
feel uncomfortable, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's inherently bad.
Yes. Oh, I'm so, so glad that your book is going to be diving into that topic because that is so important. And I feel like that's one of the key reasons people get stuck in that cycle of fear when it comes to ghosts and paranormal is because it can feel very uncomfortable. It can feel very intense, but intense doesn't mean bad.
Mhm.
Heavy doesn't mean bad, So I'm so glad that you're kind of opening those doors for people who may still be in that in-between state of like, I'm still a little scared about this, to be able to get into that aspect of it in a way that's hopefully like, oh, I'm feeling something that feels intense. Let me pause and reflect and be like, oh, wait, this doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's something evil. It just means that there's something here. And I'm very sensitive to it. And it feels very, very highly intense to me. And if I'm not comfortable, I can excuse myself or whatever needs to happen. And
Mhm.
so that kind of makes me wonder, was there a specific experience for you that changed your perspective on ghosts to kind of be able to do that, to be like, oh wait, this is intense but not bad.
Ooh, what was intense but not bad? I'll talk about Gertie. Gertie, she made it into my book. That is not her legal name, though I did find her legal name. Gertie was very good at projecting her judgment. So let me take it back real quick. I lived in a house, I called it the bus stop house. It was between three different unmarked burial grounds in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oop.
Yeah, we got those. That's why when people are like, yeah, unmarked burial grounds in Savannah, I'm like, yes. And just about every colonial port city and then some up the East Coast, but I digress. So this house is located between these burial grounds. That's only part of the problem. The other thing was the house was over 100 years old, and it just so happened that it had seen a lot of high feeling sorts of things. Almost
Mm.
every room had its own spirit, including the bathrooms, because the bathrooms used to be different rooms of the house. And then you had the passerbys, the people who were, for some reason, going in between the burial grounds, assuming
Mm.
to see their friends because it's Wilmington and spirits love their gossip chain. They've got to go from place to place. It is so true. I could write a whole book about things that ghosts. Anywho, Gertie oversaw this house that I was living in. She oversaw every ghost in the house. She oversaw every passerby, all of that. And she was very opinionated.
Mm.
I made a few skits about her years ago, though I didn't get nearly into all the things that happened. I actually told a story in the book that was not on any of my skits. I have a few stories like that, happy to say it. I still have plenty of things to share beyond just what I've shared on social media. And she, I think to some people, in fact, I ran into the person who bought the house after the owners who owned it while I was renting there had sold it. The new owner was very skeptical of her, kind of thought she was a bad entity. I actually walked by
Mm.
her house and she had a bundle of sage and she was going through it. And I was like, well, that's not going to keep Gertie out, but whatever. And she ran into me because she saw me online, and this is why Wilmington very much feels like a small town sometimes. And she said, oh, yeah, I moved into your old house. And I was like, all right, how are you doing? And she's like, that old lady. And I said, I know. And she's like, she doesn't like me. I was like, she doesn't like most people because that's her house and she sees it a very particular way. Thing
Yep.
is, though, that woman tried to sage her out
Mm.
because she was uncomfortable. Tried to sage out a few of the folks that were in there because they're uncomfortable. Though I will say, without Gertie, that house is, I'm not going to say literally on fire. Obviously, it's not literal, but there would be spirits all over the place.
Mm.
I'll tell you, when I came back from a tour, and I talk about it more in the book, I brought something back with me by accident.
Mm.
And oh, she was angry with me. She was angry with me because she was like, no, 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 no. You don't bring stuff into my house. There's some that come through that pass by, but you're not bringing folks into my house. She at the very beginning was very uncomfortable in general because we weren't unpacking our things fast enough. We weren't going to church on Sundays. We had a dog inside. She was very upset about all these things. And part of what I talk about in the book is how we found compromise.
Mm.
And if I had not been looking for that compromise
Mm.
of, okay, hey, the dog does not live outside. That's just not what she does. She's a potato. She's potato inside only, you know. She goes out with me only. Like that's it. Even in the compromise, it wasn't just like it was peace all of a sudden. It
Yeah.
was okay, well, you better clean the dog's feet before she comes in after a rainstorm or something like that. I said, I do understand. That being said, if I did not understand the element of compromise, how to bring it back to that, Yeah, I probably would have thought she was evil too. Oh, there's somebody always, there's such a heavy feeling whenever I'm in this room. Ah, because the room is filled with my unpacked boxes and my almost unpacked area over there. It
Mm.
takes some observation to be like, okay, well, what's changed between yesterday and today? What opinions am I picking up on, even if I don't fully understand how that's possible yet? What voices are kind of coming through? Like I noticed that she didn't like my dog because I kept getting the words "dogs belong outside," and it just kept
Mm.
playing in my head. Dogs belong outside. Dogs belong outside, and I was just like, I don't believe that, obviously. What
Mm-hmm.
where is that coming from? It was beyond like an invasive thought, because invasive thoughts are our brains, not being kind to us. I was like, no, that's something I inherently do not agree with.
Yeah.
So clearly it's coming from something else.
The call's coming from outside the house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So yeah, it really is a matter of experience as well, I think.
Yeah.
I talk about that in the book too, where I encourage people, go figure out what makes you uncomfortable. Go in a safe
Mm.
way. You don't have to lock yourself in
Yes.
the basement. You don't have to go in the dark. You don't
Uh-huh.
have to go alone.
Yes.
But you do deserve to understand what is uncomfortable to you, but more importantly, why is it
Yeah.
uncomfortable? Is it truly like an entity that's out to scare you, out to mess with you, or something like that? Or is the entity just having a bad day and you're an empath and you're checking into it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, it's so perfectly put with your story and kind of like what you're talking about because it's as you know, someone who's a pet communicator who has many cats. For anybody watching the
Yes.
video, you can see my cats in the background. It's cats are like having roommates, and so are ghosts, in my opinion. My previous place that I was renting, extremely haunted. Definitely was like one of those kind of like what you're talking about, like a bus stop where people just are coming and going and coming and going. And it can be a lot, but if you are able to discern it and you're able to kind of have that understanding of like, okay, these are the rules of the home. This is how things are going to work. This is what I'm comfortable with. It can help a lot. And like how you were saying, it becomes this compromise of working together, which again comes back to that idea of it's almost like having a roommate that you just can't see all the time, maybe sometimes out of the corner of your eye or in your mind's eye, but you are able to have these ways of working with them. And so it really does take that paranormal and make it more normal, more mundane, which actually brings me to the absolutely wonderful subheading of your book, which is how to make the paranormal normal. And I would love it if you could speak more on that concept because as we talked about already, it really sounds like it was your inspiration for the pamphlet, which then
Mhm.
became the book, which is now where we are at. So, this idea of making the paranormal normal, like any of your thoughts or anything that like is really resonant for you in regards to that subheading.
Yeah, really, one, I believe we all have intuition at base. We all have intuition.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just a matter of understanding how our intuition shows up for us.
Hmm.
Same thing with our physical senses. Some of us will be able to see better than we hear. That doesn't mean we can't see at all. It's just understanding that if something comes through fuzzy, put your ear up to it if you can. It's stuff
Yes.
like that. Trying to make that more simplistic to understand. With making the paranormal normal, it's if you're familiar with something, why would you need to be afraid of it?
Hmm. Hmm.
If you understood, like, oh yeah, sometimes I talk to folks from 100 years ago and get their take on whatever is going on in town, it's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
And something I'm really going to be saying more, and I've already started to say more on my live streams and my Patreon, I want people to be special for things beyond psychic mediumship. I I think it's cool that, I've been established as a psychic medium, and that's still a part of who I am. I'm a teacher as well, but really I want more people to be like, yeah, I'm a archaeologist and I utilize psychic mediumship to get me to where I need to go. Artists have been doing this forever. Musicians have been doing this forever. Performers have been doing this forever. Like we've all been
Hmm.
utilizing channeling for so, so long. And I want people to understand they can utilize talking to ghosts in historic locations. And, it's not always to say, oh, well, the ghost told me, so clearly the thing that we've been looking for is, this date. Well, we want to find actual, something
Yeah.
in our physical to support that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Though I think about what more society could offer one another if we utilize psychic skill sets to enhance our understanding of each other, of the
Yes.
earth, of the past, and how that can actually move us towards the future. So, the larger concept here, when I say how to make the paranormal normal, what I want for people long term is for people to feel like they can trust that intuitive guidance that we
Mm.
all have and make that normal in their day-to-day life and how that can enhance everything.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I 1,000% agree. There's this trap that I feel like a lot of people who are just getting into this can fall into that I absolutely fell into when I started really getting into this, which is I'm either this or this. Very black or white dichotomous thinking of it has to be either or. But there's that in between where it's like, why can't we do both and blend it? This is kind of like what I'm very passionate about right now as someone who's a therapist in training, who's also a psychic witch, is those two things actually go hand in hand quite well. Because if you're someone who is, has the empathic ability to really connect in on somebody's emotions, it will help cue you in when someone's having those deep conversations with you of like, okay, this is where the conversation needs to go, or, oh, I'm feeling this in my body. Let me check in with the client. And so this conversation of like going to locations and being able to connect in with the ghosts and then do the research because they may be able to actually point you in the right direction. Just like when I'm sitting with the client and their emotions or what I'm sensing in my body may be able to point me in the right direction. It can be a blend of these things. And like you're saying, everybody, because I 1,000% agree, we all are built with intuition within us. So it's like we were meant to use it. And yet we've been kind of like ignoring it and pushing it to the side. So finding ways to blend it and making it a part of the day-to-day life is, I agree, so important. So it's really cool to hear how you're talking about blending conversations with spirits in this way of like let's bring that into the day to day because when we're able to do that like you're saying it becomes a part of the normal process and is no longer this like weird other thing that's like so far removed from us but it's actually just innately part of us.
Yeah. And to bring attention to what you said as well, I get very detailed so that I don't have to worry about the details eventually. And what you're describing, which I think is important for anybody so that they stay grounded, to understand the differences between what your physical senses are giving you, what the intuitive senses are giving you, and then how they overlap. That is a grounding thing, but
Mhm.
that doesn't all come at once, which
Yes.
I think too with some paranormal based books, it gets straight into here's how you talk to ghosts, pull out your Ouija board and have fun, like that kind of thing. Whereas I'm like, all right, I go into part of the psychology of it. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
you ought to understand how you believe about these things first, with the understanding that that might change.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
create your theory, whatever it might be, and then get out there. Go to
Hmm.
school, right? Like you go to school for psychology, you have an understanding of what psychology is, and then you get into psychology.
Yes.
And then you come out and you're like, oh, okay, I have all this
Mhm.
information so that I can do the thing.
Apply
And
it. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, apply it. That's another good word for that. But also you have been studying your intuition for so long. So
Hmm.
now they blend. But
Exactly.
you at any point can pull back and say, all right, well, psychologically speaking, according to what the client is saying, this is what we need
Hmm.
to focus on. This is what they've said. This fits, the traits of this particular condition or what they're going through. But then you can also apply my intuition says I need to keep going because there's something underneath that. Or,
Yes. Whatever.
that's,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Oh, I love that so much. I feel like it's so important that these conversations of normalizing these things has become I've been seeing it slowly more and more, and I really feel like people like you, Rebecca, are really like the flagship, one of the many flagships of like, let's normalize this. Let's bring this back to be a part of our day-to-day lives. Let's remind ourselves that, we can do this too, not just the people that we see on screen who are practicing and doing these things, that everybody can do this. So, with that, I'm curious, what do you feel is the most important first step that folks can take when it comes to shifting their perspective on spirits and normalizing it, like what we're talking about?
I think it goes into allowing your viewpoints to be expanded on and
Mm,
also admitting when you're wrong.
mm,
In spirituality, sometimes it's not always the black and white, you're wrong. Sometimes there's a better answer.
mm.
It's similar to forecasting the weather, because it's raining over here, but it's sunny over here. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? People are experiencing rain, people are experiencing sun, and then if you walk in between, you might get a little bit of rain at the same time. At least that's how it works in the South. This happens often where it's like, oh, it's raining, but if I walk right over there, I'll be in the sun. So like you can do that sometimes. Um, but it's understanding that two things can be true and
Mm,
allowing yourself to get the perspective from something beyond you. So you can be sitting or standing in the sun and say,
yeah.
well, for it to be raining is wrong. But to entirely throw out the reality that it's raining over there and say that the forecast was wrong and everything like that, that's not the most correct answer.
Mm.
Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Just making sure, because I was like, I went into weather there. That was an interesting choice on my part. Um, with anything spiritual, it's always very personal.
Mhm.
And some people will go in, I have a whole section about bias and how
Mm,
bias is not inherently bad. What's bad is when you don't realize you have it.
yep.
So
Hmm.
going about it and saying, okay, well, this is what I believe. I believe this way because of either my background, my religion, my friend group, the books that I read, the media that I consume, all the things that create bias. And then to say, okay, cool. I know what I believe. I know that I can go back to that at any time. Now I'm going to branch into this area over here with the understanding that I could find something new.
Mm,
And when
yeah.
finding something new, because new happens all the time, what do? We experience it so long as we feel comfortable and safe doing so. Well, I won't say comfortable because comfortable can keep us in a box, but as long as we feel safe doing so, we experience it and then we get to a safe place again. And then we can go back and say, okay, well, this was the experience. Does that check out with my belief systems? If it does, great. If it does not, do I want to keep exploring when I understand that something is beyond what I thought I understood before?
Yeah.
Encourage people to first have a grasp of what you believe in, have a grasp, even if it's just like, I don't really know what I believe, but I think ghosts are out there. Okay, great. And then go in and challenge that. Go in
Mm,
and do the research. I talk about how to ground yourself in cross-validation, but also in research, breaking down your process of how you're thinking at the time, making sure your emotions are well set for what you're doing.
mm.
I don't want to overwhelm anybody here, but I am very much like, what do? You read the book, you absorb the book, and then you go into the thing and you kind of forget what the book says, but it should be somewhere for you to recall. And that's kind of the best way to go about it sometimes.
Yes, yes. And it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about really comes down to not only like core beliefs, but also discernment, being able to understand yourself, understand the things around you, and ask the questions. So that way you're getting a perspective that if you were stuck in that fear-based zone, you wouldn't be able to really break out of as easily.
Mhm. I'll tell you too. one of my biases that I'm coming from is the amount of times I've been told by different psychic mediums that I'm talking to bad things and that I'm corrupted and I'm possessed because I'm talking
Mm,
to bad things and that those things don't exist. And obviously I don't agree with that. And I I never want to make somebody else feel the way that I have felt when people said that to me. When people who either had larger followings or had been professional psychic mediums for longer, and for some of these people to look at me and say, like, oh, that's cute that you made all of it up because ghosts don't exist. And I'm just like,
yeah.
I want discernment, but I never want to make somebody feel like they were entirely shut down because they were having an experience with something that perhaps I didn't experience, but it doesn't hurt me when they're creating, something like beautiful artwork out of it, or they're creating a connection between humans that make them feel more seen. Who am I to come in and say, "Oh, you're wrong," when you're creating beauty?
Yes. Yes. I always tell people whenever I'm teaching classes or having any of these conversations, the biggest red flag for me is if someone tells you 100% without a doubt that they know and that you're wrong. Big red flag. Nope, we are not here for that because there's nobody knows for sure. I can say that, ghosts and spirits are XYZ things, but I don't know. That's based on my belief, that's based on my past experiences, it's based on my inherited beliefs, it's based on the context of so much of my life and my surroundings and who I've learned from. But that doesn't mean I know. And so I love giving these disclaimers at the beginning of podcast episodes and classes where it's like, this is just me speaking. But if there's differentiation between you and me, that's normal and that should be there. That, we shouldn't all be on the same exact playing field because if we were, then we can't exchange this information of like, well, I feel this, I believe this, and you believe that, and where can we blend those? What can we take? What can we leave, you know?
You Any of us, we can know for ourselves without
Mhm.
requiring our know to be somebody else's knowing. And we can also, oh, there was a point that I was going to make, and now I'm getting slow about it because I'm like, where did it go? Where did the point go? Um, the point is that when we, even if the understanding is I don't know everything, but I know as much as I can, and that makes me feel grounded, I don't need to combat a bunch of people that don't have the same beliefs as I do because I'm sound in myself and I did a
Mm.
lot of work to be sound in myself. So when people come in, and I've done this, if I'm doing like a public paranormal investigation, every now and then somebody comes in and they're like, "Did you go to the basement? There's a demon down there." I don't need to be insulted by that. I don't need to be upset because I can just go down there and be like, "Sup?" I literally did this at a museum the other day, and I love this particular museum, so I'm not gonna speak badly or anything like that about it. But some people call that there's this one entity in there, like this demon and stuff, and I went in there and I was like, "Hey," and the spirit was just like, "Yeah," and I was like, "I know the truth," and he's like, "Don't tell anybody," and I was like, "You got it."
He's like, look, I got a good thing going here. Just keep it on the down low.
Yeah, love the paranormal tourism. And I was like, you got a good gig.
Yeah.
And nobody's looking to move you. Nobody, I don't think it
Mhm.
could, honestly. They're pretty well situated and they're not hurting anybody. And that's the thing. Some people they can get very passionate about it. They're like, there's an evil entity in there. And I'm just like, okay, that's what you believe. And that's fine. And if they're getting upset with me because I'm not believing them, I think that says a lot more about them.
hmm hmm Yes. And it comes back to that idea of like what feels uncomfortable is not always going to be the big scary evil demon in the basement. There was something that you had mentioned earlier that really, really made my ears perk up, and I would love it if you could talk a little bit about it. You had kind of differentiated between safety and comfort, and how comfort can keep you in a box and safety is different. I was hoping you could speak a little on that because I think I know where this is coming from and where that's gonna go, but I'm just like, I feel like this is so important.
All right, well, I will reference a few other folks that have expanded my understanding of these concepts. One is a channel called Yes Theory. Their slogan is seek discomfort because you're not going to make any changes by staying in your comfort zone. You can dream all you like, but actually bringing that into fruition, that gets into the psychological reality of we have to create new, uh, you would know what I'm talking about, the neural pathways in our
Hmm.
brain to create safety for ourselves. And we
Yes.
do that in many different ways. So that's one I will cite. Other things I will say, I've been reading a lot of autobiographies by women in particular who I admire, who talk about these things that they've been overcoming and how they got out of their comfort zone, especially being a part of the patriarchy and how they move through that. I recently finished Becoming by Michelle Obama. She talks about that. She talks about going beyond her comfort, which was the house she grew up in Chicago.
Mm.
The other thing I will cite, this is a book that I'll say it has changed my life. It's called The Mountain Is You by Bridget Weist. I actually recommended to all of my Patreons to read it. It is not a spiritual book whatsoever. In fact, she even talks about intuition and she's kind of like, but we're here to talk about psychology. We're not talking about that. That's not what we're doing. And I appreciate that take because psychology keeps me grounded. In the book, The Mountain Is You, there's a lot of conversation around what if the only thing keeping you from the peak and the bottom was you? Which is
Mm.
a big pill to swallow for literally everybody. And one of the things she says in her books from some of the things that she has read, the peer-reviewed sources and that sort of thing, is we are not built to be happy. We are built to be comfortable.
Mm.
And that's why you will see so many comfortable people who are miserable. They have all their needs met and they're miserable because that's not what they want.
Hmm.
Our understanding of success is oftentimes set or given to us by somebody else. And once we realize that, that's when we can actually say, okay, I have all the comforts that society told me I should have. I checked every single box. But what I wanted to do was be a dancer or something like that,
Yeah.
pick whatever, we have all these things ingrained in us that we took on to survive for whatever reason. And then when we realize the reason why we're not happy is because we stayed comfortable that the mountain is you, the mountain is me, the mountain is us. Then there's the reality of like, what do you do with it? So when we're looking at comfort versus safety, safety, I believe, is not being in a crowded roadway where there are cars, right? Like it's a very physical sort of thing. It's a I want to go to sleep at night without some rando coming in either the bedroom or knocking on my fan. Like those are the things that are physically
Mm.
safety. And then there's the mental safety, right? There's the, am I in a good headspace to do this? Do I need to cry about something? Do I need to go work out to get some of the jitters out? Do I need to do these things for my physical and mental health? Those are not like, I feel like those are a separate thing when we're keeping our brain safe and we're keeping our body safe. That is different from comfort.
Yeah.
Comfort, I think, is made, it begins and ends with the mind.
Hmm.
And we make choices every single day on, are we actually doing this to stay safe? Are we doing this to be comfortable? And
Yes.
personally, I live a life, I challenge that all the time. I'm just like, okay, I think having a lock on my door is safety, but also I am the type of person where I've slept in my van at many truck stops, and I know some people would absolutely be terrified of that. They would think that their physical safety was in danger. For me, I was like, no, it's for me, it's a comfort thing. I've got to be able to trust myself to understand if I need to wake up in the middle of the night and move, and I have done that. It changes for different people. I regularly challenge myself because if I can remove the element of me versus them, whatever them
Mm-hmm.
is on a particular day, that allows me to connect with the humanity that all of us have. Not to be a pushover, but to simply say, okay, I'm human, you're human, we're all here, we're all trying to figure it out. If I weren't so caught up in my, safety, and I say safety in parentheses there, because sometimes we put safety in areas that it's not necessarily applicable. If I'm not so caught up in that, what more could I understand about
Mm-hmm.
the human element and myself that could actually propel anything forward? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I come, that's the aim that I come from with this book. It's
Yeah.
like, what if we look at ghosts in the same way instead of the us and them? What if we're looking at it as, oh, well, I'm not comfortable with that ghost right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm unsafe.
Yes. Yes. And I think that this is such a great idea to bring into these spaces of, I've talked about it before, so some of my listeners may know, but there's a window of tolerance. And the window of tolerance is where we feel safe, where we can walk up to the edge, the border of that window of tolerance of our safety and say, okay, how comfortable am I taking steps outside of that to a point where I'm right up against the edge of I'm not disrespecting my internal boundaries, but I'm doing something that is uncomfortable, but is different and is a new experience. And knowing that at any point we can take a couple steps back and we can go back to that safety zone and then we can go again. And we can do this like back and forth, and that it doesn't have to be this all or nothing jumping in outside of our comfort zone to the point that we're far from what makes us feel safe. But outside of the comfort, still within safety, edging up to that line that we have, that in, whatever, wherever that internal line is. Because, like, there's an episode that is going to be coming out where a listener had actually written in, like, I don't feel comfortable going to haunted houses. And it's like, okay, so find where your safety line is, find where that window of tolerance is, and how can you approach it in a way that you're able to do something different that is a little uncomfortable. So I feel like that conversation of this, what is safe versus what is comfortable, and that window of tolerance is so important when starting, when getting into this kind of work, when really diving deep into it. So I'm so glad that you had mentioned that, and that I like my ears perked up and I was like, ooh, we have to talk about this.
Melody. Yeah. I even think with what you said with this listener, using the example that you presented, uh, you don't have to go in the house. You can even stay out on the sidewalk. You can stay
Yep.
across the street.
Yep. And that's something I discuss is like, who says you
Yeah.
have to actually like do the whole shebang?
Mhm.
Who's to say you can't
Perfect.
baby step it, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. As we're coming to the end here, there are two last things that I would love to kind of talk about, which is one, do you feel like people in general are starting to move away from fearing ghosts, or you feel like there's still collectively a ways to go? Like, where do you feel that wave is right now?
Ooh, well, I think the larger question here is, do I feel if people are making time for any of this spiritual stuff in the first place?
Hmm.
We had a lot of time in 2020 for better, for worse.
Hmm.
We got that time back for a little bit in 2021 for better, for worse. I I see a lot of people being thrown back into the grind. A lot of that has to do with our society. A lot of that has to do with very real world physical
Yeah.
requirements like food and housing and
Yeah.
water. So I think that's the first thing to address here. It's spiritualism. There's never any time for it until you make some time.
Hmm.
And I believe it's worth it every single time because I'm a spirit inside of a body.
Yeah.
And when that spirit gets to connect with the spirit that's all around me, it allows me to be like, oh, I have perspective and I'm in my present. That's really cool. As far as you mentioned being able to connect with ghosts. Was there a fear element in there? Am I adding that in as far as like people being afraid of them, or was that just something my brain did?
Oh yeah, no, no, no. Like people moving away from fearing ghosts. Is
Yes.
that something?
I oh see I see things so literally because I see a lot of people just being like, oh yeah, are cool. If I live with a ghost, that'd be cool. I do see a lot
Hmm.
more of that.
Mm,
Though I certainly do see it. I think it's a religious difference. The more hardcore religion people can get where they believe something that they're being told rather than what they're feeling for themselves. I think that's the hard line there. Overall, I do feel like people are getting more comfortable in it, but I will also say I'm coming from a bias. Like I'm coming from the bias of living in one of the most underrated haunted cities in the South. I'm
hmm.
coming from the bias of regularly visiting historic places that have ghosts. I I would love to think that this is a conversation more and more people will have. I'm hoping that my book will spark that conversation and will encourage people to slow down. Though I also want to honor everybody's individual journey here.
Yeah.
And I want to honor the reality that people will have to make that choice, whether it's for ghosts or spiritualism or their own bias or what have you. I'd like to believe society we're moving in a direction that's more open-minded,
Hmm.
though we have to allow ourselves to be that way. We've got to get there first.
Yes. Oh, I like that. It's true. It's so true. And as we are kind of coming to a close here on this wonderful discussion that we've had about your book and making the paranormal normal, I'm curious if there is a specific idea or line that you would like to share with us, to kind of get people excited about your book and to kind of like drive home the point of everything we've been discussing today.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't think of anything better than to read the dedication. So I actually could I read a little paragraph? Could I read the whole dedication?
Oh,
I didn't say that
please.
earlier, but okay.
Yeah.
So the dedication goes to the younger version of me who needed this book, to the countless others who learned along with me through socials, consults, and community, to my mom who loved me through all the weird, to Theron, whose belief in me never faltered, to Hermes, who played psychopomp to my spiritual journey, to Rupert, who taught me fate was real, to the ghost who challenged me to continue growing. Thank you.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh, that's so beautiful. Ah, I'm so excited for your book to come out. This conversation has only gotten me more excited for it. So why don't you let people know where can they find your book? When does it come out? Pre-order, all that fun stuff. And also, where can people find you in general, in case they don't know already?
Yes, so you can find all this information on my website. That is Rebekah, Rebekah, theghostguide.com. And you can find the book anywhere. It's, of course, on the larger distributors, Barnes& and Noble, Amazon. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in it, please call up your local bookstore and be like, have you heard this book? I really want to get it. Or call up your local library and say, hey, can we add this to the collection? I would love it. But it is available through ebook, through hard copy, audiobook, all those good things. And if you pre-order, that super helps me because it tells the publisher that people are serious and they are excited. And if you happen to be on the East Coast on July 28th, there will be a launch party at a small bookstore called Pomegranate Books, which I think is perfect. The
I
world
love
will get
it.
off,
Yes.
and I will be there. I will be answering questions and talking about the book. I will be joined by the executive director of the Railroad Museum, who is also in this book. The Railroad Museum is in this book, and I'll be doing a signing. So we'll be having a little party out here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and that'll be yeah, July 28th from 5:30 to 7:30, and it is open to the public.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, now I wish I could go to the East Coast just like that? That
Welcome
sounds so
anytime.
fun.
Even in
And
astral, you can show up.
yeah,
It's
they'll
cool.
just astral project there. No, no
Yeah, no
worries.
big deal.
And what date does the book officially get released?
That'll be I believe that the 28th as well. Or maybe it's the 26th. Maybe it is the 26th. I should know these things. I know it's going to be released on either the 26th or the 28th of July, but if you pre-order, they'll just send it to you, so you don't even have to worry about
You
it.
won't have to worry about, yeah, we'll have the
Yeah.
details in the
Give
description
yourself a
below.
gift,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
That's what I've been telling people. They're like, "Oh, wait till it comes out." I'm like, "Why wouldn't you want a little funsy gift to show up in your mailbox
I
or in
mean,
your email?"
exactly. I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for your book to come out. I'm sure people are really going to love it. And hopefully, this episode gets people even more excited for the full, stories that you have in there and your experiences and your tips and your insights. And I'm sure it's going to be lovely. And I am so glad that we got to talk about it today. Thank you so much for coming and discussing this with everyone here. I really appreciate you.
As always, thank you so much. I love your show. I love what you do, and I was very excited when you wanted to have me on for this, so thank you.
Aw, thanks. Thank you so much for joining me in the parlor for this episode. If you want more psychic magical tips, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasma Witch. Fantasmawitch. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I have a Discord community. I do Q&As, live classes, workshops, and more. To book a reading or consultation directly with me, you can go to my website, www.phantasmawitch.com. All of these links can be found in the episode description. And please, if you enjoyed the show, make sure you go leave a rating, leave a review, share it with others. It really helps the show to reach new listeners if you take a moment to do that, and it is sincerely appreciated. Shout out to the artist Cat Lines, who helped me to redesign the podcast logo to the beautiful magical teacup you see today. See you, mystical friends, in the parlor next time.